The movie begins in the remote wilderness of Alaska. A man named Winston sits in an old motel warming up a box of noodles. Suddenly, police rush in with guns drawn and arrest him. Soon after, he meets Deputy Marshal Madeline Harris. It turns out Winston has connections to a powerful crime boss named Moretti. In a desperate attempt to save himself, he offers to testify against Moretti in exchange for full immunity. Madeline, though unsure, agrees. She is assigned to take Winston to Seattle, where he is set to testify. When they get on a small plane, Winston immediately complains that it's not the kind of plane he was expecting. Madeline dryly tells him that he should have run to Miami instead of hiding in Alaska. She shackles him to his seat, making it clear he can't escape. Their pilot, a man who introduces himself as Daryl Booth, greets them warmly and starts flying. Everything seems normal at first, but Madeline notices a scratch on the back of Booth's head and asks about it. He casually says it's just part of the job. As the plane rises to avoid a flock of birds, a document falls from the pilot's seat. Winston looks down and sees papers, ID cards, and photos belonging to the real Daryl Booth. His heart stops. The man flying the plane isn't Booth, he's a hitman. Winston panics and tries to warn Madeline, but she thinks he's just feeling sick and ignores him. The pilot turns around and gives Winston a sickness bag, but Madeline notices something. There seems to be blood on his sleeve. Her suspicion grows. She asks him how he knew they were going to Seattle when she hadn't told him. He stays calm and says there aren't many places to go from that airstrip. But Madeline isn't convinced. She asks if he knows the local pilot, Jenny Kowski. He quickly says that Jenny is a good guy and they've worked together before. But that's the wrong answer. Jenny is a woman. Realizing Madeline is catching on, the pilot lunges at her. A violent fight starts in the small cockpit. Madeline fights back, but the hitman knocks her out.
You want to play rough?
Terrified, Winston begs for his life, telling the hitman he never gave up any information on Moretti. Desperate, he offers the hitman $1 million to let him go. Meanwhile, Madeline starts to wake up. Thinking fast, she grabs her taser and waits for the right moment. As the hitman looks back at the controls, she shocks him into unconsciousness. Madeline doesn't waste any time. She jumps into the pilot's seat, grabs the controls, and just manages to pull the plane up, avoiding a crash. With her heart racing, she switches to autopilot and quickly ties up the hitman before he can wake up. Then she frees Winston from his restraints, knowing she'll need his help to move the pilot to the back of the plane. Madeline discovers a wallet belonging to the hitman, and inside she finds troubling information. Details about her and Winston's mother's address. It seems Moretti's men are threatening Winston's family to force him into cooperating. Realizing the danger they're in, she immediately attempts to contact help. She reaches out to her fellow deputy, Caroline Van Zandt, urgently alerting her that their trip has been compromised. Madeline also warns her about a possible leak in the department working with Moretti. Caroline promises to investigate.
Okay, all right, don't worry, we're on it. I will call you back.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Madeline connects with another pilot, Hassan, to ensure they have backup in the air. Hassan tries to break the tension by making light conversation, jokingly asking her out in an attempt to distract her from the seriousness of the situation.
Myself? I haven't eaten all day.
You want to have dinner with me?
Yeah, if you insist. I mean, we should probably focus on landing first. Your paying, though, seems only fair since you asked me.
However, as the danger mounts, he shifts gears, focusing entirely on getting her safely toward Anchorage. Madeline is soon informed by Caroline that the real Daryl Booth has been gruesomely murdered. No eyes, no teeth. It sounds like someone really took their time with him. Before she can react, the plane begins veering dangerously toward a mountain. With quick reflexes, Madeline barely manages to pull the plane up, narrowly avoiding a crash. But the aircraft still slams into a massive snowdrift, throwing the situation into further chaos. The hitman regains consciousness, a cruel smirk creeping across his face as he taunts Madeline. He brings up a painful memory from her past, an incident she had tried to bury. He taunts her about someone in her care being burned alive and left to die. Madeline's rage flares. She strikes him mercilessly. But Winston, noticing her anger, forced her to explain herself. Madeline's voice grew cold as she recounted the events. Years ago, she had been assigned to protect a woman named Maria in Mexico. Maria's boyfriend had connections to the cartels, and one day, Maria asked for a bath unsupervised. Despite protocol, Madeline agreed, but it was a decision that would haunt her forever. A Sicario threw a Molotov cocktail through the window, and because Maria was handcuffed to the bathtub, she couldn't escape the flames. Madeline tried to save her, but it was too late. As a result, she was demoted to desk duty, her guilt a constant weight she had carried ever since. Meanwhile, as Madeline spoke, the hitman quietly began cutting himself loose, using the temple of the glasses he had stolen from her earlier. Caroline soon called, reassuring Madeline that a team was waiting for her in Anchorage, ready to assist.
This is good news, Deputy. We're going to have you on the ground in no time. Now turn that autopilot on and stay the course.
But something didn't sit right. Madeline grew suspicious. Could Caroline be the leak? Trying to connect the dots, she reached out to Deputy Director Coleridge, who was relaxing at his beach house in Massachusetts. She updated him on the situation, hoping to gather more intel to keep tabs on Caroline. She needs to be contained and, I understand, Deputy. Believe me, I'll shut her down. Later, as the conversation shifted, Winston began confessing to the crimes he had committed. This led Madeline to recall a conversation she had overheard. Winston had mentioned sending money to a specific location. Idiot sent me a transfer request from an IP address in St. Kitty, Massachusetts. That same location was where Coleridge had claimed he was coming from. The pieces clicked together. Coleridge was the leak all along. In a moment of clarity, Madeline contacted Caroline, confessing her mistake and warning her that Coleridge was coming for her. You've got to get out of there, he's coming for you. Okay, after encountering a shipwreck along the rugged coastline, Madeline and Winston managed to give Hassan a clue about their location. The fair dancer. The fair dancer. Yeah, that makes sense. The information helped Hassan's radar pick them up, making it easier for him to guide them toward safety. Just as they began to feel a sense of relief, disaster struck again. The hitman, having freed himself, stabbed Winston twice in the chest. Before Madeline could react, he attempted to strangle her. In a desperate move, Winston pulled the knife from his own body and cut the belt, strangling Madeline, making the hitman slip back as the pressure on the belt eased. With the hitman temporarily distracted, Madeline seized the moment. She hit him with a flare, knocking the wind out of him, then finished the job by knocking him out cold with a fire extinguisher. Madeline quickly applied first aid to Winston, but he was losing blood fast and his condition was worsening. Desperation set in as she contacted Hassan, trying to find a faster route to Anchorage. Is there anything faster? Hassan, aware of the risk of burning more fuel, offered to help, but Madeline was determined. She wouldn't let Winston die, not like this. She flew the plane, pushing it closer toward the landing strip. As they got closer, Madeline tried to call Caroline again, but this time she heard Coleridge's voice on the phone. He told her that Caroline had been in a fatal car accident, probably caused by one of Moretti's men.
There was a car crash and she was T-boned leaving the office.
Madeline's anger flared. She confronted Coleridge, telling him she knew he was the leak and swore to expose him. No one will believe a word you say. A jury will. Suddenly, 2 military jets flew beside them, reminding them that they were being watched. The jets were there to make sure the plane didn't crash into a civilian area. Madeline tried reaching out to Hassan again for help, but before she could act, the hitman, who had freed himself by breaking his thumb, lunged at her. In an instant, Madeline shot him twice, knocking him down. Hassan's voice came through the radio, telling her to stay calm and focused, but things were getting worse quickly. The fuel was running low, and Winston was drifting in and out of consciousness. When the runway finally came into view, Madeline made a rough, urgent landing. Police and paramedics were already waiting. The plane door opened, and at that moment the hitman was thrown out of the plane, landing on the runway where a truck hit him. Madeline stopped the plane with a loud screech. Winston slowly started to wake up and medics rushed to his side. Madeline finally met Hassan in person. A brief moment of relief amidst the chaos. But as she looked at him, her eyes narrowed. She saw one of Moretti's men sneaking behind Hassan and getting into the ambulance with Winston. Realizing what was happening, Madeline ran toward them just in time to see the assassin trying to suffocate Winston. Without hesitation, she shot the assassin dead, her heart racing. She grabbed the assassin's phone, called Coleridge, and made her final warning. You're done. Your days are numbered. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.